Are live. Eric Butler, we are live. This is real. Welcome back to Unauthorized Opinions, uopod.com. Like, share, subscribe.
It's pure propaganda and it's super cringe, by the way.
An unopened can of orange soda just chilling in the parking lot. I was like, yeah, I gotta vote for Trump, dude.
It's great here, a lot of fat chicks and a lot of screaming.
Your podcast sucks. It's mental, mate.
It's mental, mate. It's mental, mate. Eric Butler, how art thou?
All right, we made it. Yeah, living the dream, bro. As you know.
Forgot to go full white trash today. Makes everything blue.
Summer's over. White boy summer's over, bro.
It's actually very hot this week here for some reason. I would wager in the mid 80s. And
Canadian summer, Indian summer. Remember we used to say Indian summer? I don't think you can say that anymore.
Did people used to say that? We used to say an Indian rug burn is when you twist a person's wrist and make it hurt really.
Yeah, I remember that. But Indian summer was something actually very specific to the Bay Area because it typically would be warmer in like late September and October than it was all summer. So back when I was a kid, they used to call it Indian summer, which is just funny because we now know that as the hall monitor, as HR of the entire country, California is walking back all of their old slang. But yes, sure.
As they should.
Yeah.
We just had Eric here in the Great White North. I think we had it on Friday or something. Truth and Reconciliation Day, which is Feel Bad for Natives Day. Nobody cares about it. You're supposed to wear orange for some reason. I was watching baseball, the Blue Jays game, and all the broadcasters had orange T-shirts on. I would wager 30 people in the crowd had orange T-shirts on.
Red.
That sounds racialized to me. Can't confirm nor deny. But the great thing about it, it's not even a holiday, so they just made up this day for no reason. And then last year, when Justin Trudeau declared it a super important day, he went surfing on the same day. So we all know he doesn't care about natives, but this whole, like, everybody's mean thing lives on, is what I'm saying, in Canada. And there's no escaping it from holiday to holiday. I'm sure something bad's coming for Thanksgiving this year, especially because Trudeau's trying to burn the house down before he leaves.
Can I just say, I don't know what stories you got lined up. I'm hoping that you have downloaded and have prepared the Pablo Torre clip. Did you look at that one?
Yes.
Please tell me you looked at that. Okay.
Yes, of course. I gotta look at that.
That's actually more triggering than being in the Bay Area, which is saying a lot.
There's a lot of things to get to with that guy's clip. So he's some sort of Vivek supervillain. He's a different kind of Asian. We've got some activism to get to. Let's push that down the line. The child affirming care. Let's push that down a bit in the line for monetization purposes. We've got this congresswoman going on a rant about how Joe Biden is a great father. We've got some fat activists, and we've got some loving, caring, just overall loving and caring for children in the form of gender-affirming care, Eric. So we can get to, unless there's anything else to update from the wonderful land of California.
Well, I think, look, I feel like I say this every week, but I will legitimately work on it. Maybe getting a little bit more prepared, but I would like to, if you have, where would you like to start? Because I think the clip that I sent you that you posted to Twitter, I think I think we should review that. I think it's very telling. I think it's worse than people are even. Right? We hear the Fox Republicans and the boomers and all this stuff talk about California, and they're not wrong. But what's happening is worse than most people, I believe, can even imagine. Right? Like people are still sugarcoating it. And not realizing, it's over.
There it is. Oakland.
Yeah.
I think when you see something like this, you're just like, well, this is a junkyard. And then you see the tens of people. And then, wasn't there a thing in Oakland where they were clearing out all the garbage and activists and homeless people were upset? Weren't they doing that a few months ago?
I believe that was in San Francisco. I could be
Okay.
wrong. It's probably happening in both. I mean, we're talking about a 20-minute drive, depending on. I mean, it's not far apart. Um, but what's happening here is you can look at that and know nobody's going to clean that up. Nobody can be paid enough to clean that up. That is not going anywhere. I mean, how would you even start to sell somebody on, hey, we got this job for you, right? Like that's going nowhere. And you go to San Francisco and you see what most people, I mean, the Tenderloin, I don't know if everybody's familiar with it. It's just literally the most disgusting open air drug market possibly in all of California, very likely in all of California. And they have these banners that say the transgender district. So think about that, right? Like that's something like we talk about the Transformers every week, but they're putting banners up on street lights, flags up on poles that say the transgender district. And I think what they're doing is that is a shield, right? So while there's junkies and tents and people literally decaying, slumped over, dying on the street, the flag says transgender district, which now gives you a shield, right? Like, oh, well, we can't talk about it now because obviously it's gonna get into life and death. And so you see what I'm saying is like they wrap
Mhm.
these things up into one. So the most disgusting open air drug market in all of San Francisco that has retail businesses fleeing the city is also the transgender district. So it's just okay. Like again, to bring it full circle, like the old Family Guy meme. Okay, we'll do whatever you want then. So incredibly triggering. And I could go on this for all day or for many hours, so we'll get to whatever you have planned. But I think I was under the impression in my head we really needed to review that clip because I took that just on a whim. I didn't go out and say like, oh, this is going to be an expose. I was just driving around and I had to pull over to document one of the most disgust. No, easily. What am I talking about? Easily the most disgusting piles of trash I've ever seen, and that comes second to one I saw in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, many years ago.
Well, another reason I think for naming it that is, oh, it's just another district. It's Chinatown. It's the Hell's Kitchen, Broadway. It's just another district. It's just a which is wild that you think you could start naming districts after predominant sexualities or perversions. This is the BDSM district. This is the guy who likes to be walked around on a leash district, and this over here is the short, stocky woman with a mullet district, Eric. So we can go wherever we'd like. But yes, it is a shield to say, how can you have a problem with that district? How can you want to change it? Because as soon as somebody says, we're going to clean this up, we want to put businesses here, they want to gentrify. Of course, they're picking on the transgender district. This is where we're safe and where we call home. And it's going to kill us if you don't do what we say,
and
which is
and
always,
I don't know. Well, of course, always life and death. And I
yes.
don't know if this is good or bad. Oh, by the way, we do have a new sponsor of the show. We'll get to them in a little bit. It's not Tim Hortons. You need to blur that. They need to cut the check. Um,
That's not happening.
well,
They're not cutting any checks.
well, then
Had the
stop
Tim
putting
Hortons
their
thing behind us for a year now.
yeah the Bieber
Set changes
pouch.
are coming, Eric. Don't worry.
Um, now I forgot what I was gonna say. It was about San Francisco. I forget. You threw me off. The
Unbelievable,
sponsor.
Andrew.
All right, moving on. It will come back to me, and I will interrupt immediately when it does.
The Vivek story has gone on too long, I guess. Even though obviously he's not going to win, they probably think he's going to be a vice presidential candidate, if not the pick. I hope it's not Nikki Haley. Of the candidates, I would say he's the only one that I would be okay. Like, obviously,
Chris
I
Christie?
that would be insane. He would just die from the access to the food that he would get at the White House. Obviously, in a perfect world, I think probably DeSantis, but I don't trust him as much as I think I trust Vivek. Anyways, Vivek, they've rolled out an arch enemy of his. He appears to be an East Asian guy. Says he went to college with him, and that's about it. Is Eric? Does this guy have any other credentials other than he went to college? Like, why did they roll him out? Is it just
Yeah.
anybody
Okay.
else?
So this is what's really disappointing to me is that if I'm not mistaken, and we could be the guys to do the live Google search or be more prepared, but he used to be on Pardon the Interruption. This was a sports guy.
Oh,
This was a
he's-
sports guy who was supposed to be completely apolitical, and he's obviously, somebody somewhere has backed up the truck full of money to his apartment or to his condo or to his house or wherever he's at, and probably in DC or New York or something, and he's like, I'm gonna toe the line. And then did you watch the clip yet?
Mhm.
And he
Yeah, I
jokingly
have.
says, and this is what they do, and you can play it after this, but he jokingly says, as an agent of the deep state here to ruin his campaign. So it's a joke, right? Like, and that way they can tell you that, oh, these people are crazy, they're conspiracy theorists. It's like, what he spends this 60-second clip or 90 seconds or whatever it is saying that Vivek is a ridiculous human being, and gives nothing else except for, we'll just let it play and then we'll.
Vivek and I were not friends, but Vivek and I were in class together.
So you don't know
knew him.
So for 20 years, I've been making jokes about.
No, he doesn't. That's a weird thing. We weren't friends, but we were in class together. So you knew him? No, so you didn't know him. You just.
But then he says, for 20 years, I've been making jokes. No, you weren't. This has been a week or two. You started this as an agent of the deep state, which makes me a crazy person, apparently. But you have not been making jokes about Vivek, at least quite obviously not publicly. Do we really think for one split second, and we've only gotten 5 seconds into this clip, that this guy's been talking about Vivek to his circle of friends for the last 20 years since they left college? Absolutely not. He is and again, this man I remember him from, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, 2013, 2014, literally just talking sports on, I believe it was Pardon the Interruption, or not Pardon the
PTI.
Interruption. Sorry, Around the Horn, I believe. Around the Horn.
Around the Horn, the worst grandson of PTI.
Exactly.
About that guy from school. That guy, Stephanie, there's a taxonomy to that guy, right? That guy to me is the guy who always raised his hand in class. Not a sin in and of itself, but that guy is somebody who is both insanely ambitious and insanely image conscious, but also totally numb to the idea that everyone around them is cringing. And so Vivek, in lecture of our moral philosophy class, hundreds of kids would raise his hand, and every time he raised his hand, he would do it in a specific way that I remember because it was in the shape of a V. And look, I'm not here to be a psychoanalyst.
In the shape of a V for his name?
He would raise his hand in the shape of a V, and it was like he was shining his own bat signal for terrible libertarian takes as a freshman in college.
How would professors take to him?
He was also useful because he was the contrarian. And so I just want to make clear, as a tool of the deep state here to undermine his campaign, I have been instructed to remind people that the dude has been ridiculous for 20 years. Part of what's so absurd about him and why I cringe watching him is not because of his specific policy positions, although they are often absurd, not because he says that climate change and the climate change agenda is a lie, which is, of course, absurd. It's because the dude is doing Obama karaoke in front of everybody and daring you to think that, okay, this is what a smart person looks like. And it's what an extreme ridiculous person looks like.
Oh. So I'll go first. The guy is yelling. Bro, why are you yelling? You can hear the echo of your screams in the studio. Secondly, showing your card a little too much by saying, it's ridiculous to say climate change, blah, blah, blah. So you want people to believe you. You want people who like Vivek, who are most likely right-wingers, even far right, to believe you. Yeah, you're saying one of his viewpoints is absolutely ridiculous, and my viewpoint of it is extremely far left in that you can't even question it. And what is this guy, a people expert on Vivek Ramaswamy because he had classes with him? Yes, I get that he was probably a nerd. Yeah, but your backup for this is that he answered a lot of questions, and when he raised his hand, it was in a V shape. So specifically, you're claiming he did it like this, so it was a V, or did he do it did he do a peace sign? Did he do Spock? Other than this, it's just raising your hand. So they bring this guy out to scream about Vivek, and the best he can do is how he raises his hand and him saying that he's a crazy person because he doesn't believe in the climate agenda, which is inherently left-wing in the fact that all the people benefiting from it are known left-wingers, Al Gore, for example. And he just wants you to be like, oh, I just know him. How could anybody? This is what a fake person, a crazy person sounds like. But I'm going to go on MSNBC and say climate change, his position on climate change is a ridiculous take, and also that he raised his hand in the shape of a V in a weird form of self-idolization. But believe me, I'm the sane person for coming out with it like 2 weeks before. Maybe the benefit of the doubt is that they just found him and he has been making fun of a pharmaceutical tech entrepreneur for 20 years for some reason because he's jealous of
Doubt
his
it.
success. I would imagine that would have to be the only way. But then he's just like, I'm going to come on here and be like, this guy's insane, but I'm on MSNBC for a reason and not any other channel or not any other podcasts. Believe me, believe how bipartisan I am, Eric.
Yeah. So first, there's a weird thing in there where if you notice Stephanie Rule, the host of the show, who is obviously a leftist shill hack establishment loser, but you see she's got like her fist on her chin, like she's just so enthralled, like he's about to just drop these
Wow.
gems of knowledge, like, please tell me why Vivek is so bad. And then he obviously can't tell you. Now me and you could have a problem with Vivek and articulate maybe why you might trust him or might not trust him, I should say. And you can have a number of guys like Anomaly who might articulate in some way, shape, or form why they don't like him. But his theory there, yes, the V shape, and then he just says Vivek is oblivious to the fact that people around him are cringing, which means nothing, right?
No.
Like it. Okay, so what he's saying there is when I was around Vivek, if this is even true, it's highly likely that it's not even true. 20 years ago, he wasn't thinking about how cringe Vivek was. Maybe Vivek was the guy who, would ask a question right before the class changes or whatever, but we're talking about college. We're not even talking about high school, so it's a completely different ballgame. So giving him the benefit of the doubt and saying that these stories are even true, there's you're mad at him because he was cringe. So if what you're saying is true, you were in the classroom and your only evidence is that you didn't like what he was saying. You can't speak for anybody else. As successful as this Pablo guy is, Vivek is obviously light years ahead of him. And then at the end, for him to say, this is what an extreme ridiculous person looks like. He's not giving you anything. He's just giving you his opinion on a guy that he doesn't like you mentioned, saying he doesn't believe in climate change. Like I mean, the phrase extreme ridiculous person doesn't mean anything, right? Like Drake could be an extreme ridiculous person. He's extremely rich. He's ridiculously in his feelings. None of this means anything. And she's just sitting there gobbling it up like this is all based in some sort of fact. And it's obviously meant to steer people clear of Vivek. And I got into a little comment thread there because I jokingly said, and I do this on left wing and right wing accounts because when the right wing gets really angry when you say like I love Chris Christie and then they sort of short circuit and like they
Yeah.
don't understand. So but so I asked, I said, who are we backing, right? Like I just say like who can you tell me like what's approved? Like what can I like? Obviously you don't like Vivek because he's ridiculous. You clearly don't like Trump. I mean, who is okay? Is it Joe Biden? Are we still going with Joe Biden? Are we going with Gavin Newsom? Like, who is it okay for me to like? And they immediately jumped down my throat like, you should decide for yourself. And I'm like, well,
Oh, okay.
last time I decided for myself, you guys got really angry. So I want to understand the narrative. I try to give them a chance to explain why anybody would get on their team, but it's very clear that the main prerequisite for joining that cult is to not ask any questions, just blindly do it. Whatever we say today is what goes. We're not taking questions. We're not going to explain to you why it might be Joe Biden or why it might be Gavin Newsom or why it might be Kamala Harris. We're not going to explain that. Just do it. And they paint a clear picture of you could go in there wholeheartedly genuine as somebody as a foreigner, as a weirdo Canadian who knows nothing about American politics and say, please help me understand what I should know about these guys. And they will jump down your throat because questions are not on the table. And all of that, right? So, the point he's proving is that I just don't like this guy because he's extremely ridiculous. Case closed. I'm not going to tell you why. I'm not going to tell you what ridiculous means. I'm not going to tell you what cringe means. I'm not going to tell you what any of it means. Just know that we had a class together 20 years ago and he was a nerd in that class. insane.
If I was to think of people that I didn't like from college when I went to radio school way back in the day when I was 18, so last week, and I can think of the biggest nerds that annoyed me, my reasons would be kind of like that, where they try to answer every question, they don't get along with anybody, they think they're way better than they are, that sort of stuff. But that doesn't prove their political points wrong. If we're talking about a political person who's trying to run for president or is running for president, me not liking them does not prove their political points wrong. He can say his stance on climate change is ridiculous, and that's fine if you believe that. You're going to need to explain that, what he said, and how you
They're
refute
not
that.
going to explain it. That's the catch.
Exactly, because this is the only special thing this guy has. He went to school with him, so he has to stick with what does he know that anybody else doesn't know, and that's that he's a crazy person who did a Vulcan death grip symbol when he raised his hand. The other thing, Eric, is that this is the culture that they foster, the online culture that the left wing fosters. Like you said, you can't ask any questions, and we got to hate you. We all want to become rich, famous people, but if you do, we also want to tear you down so that I can be in your position. That is what goes through the bloodline of all people across the board in left-wing Hollywood culture. You know, Drake gets to the top, we need to find his illegitimate kid that he didn't like or whatever. Whomever it is, Vivek, whoever it is, you get to the top, I'm going to have to tear you down because I want the fame. And that's what happens in education. There's too many people I don't like in education. You guys are racist. You guys need to give money to diversity initiatives and everything so that I get money and I get power. It's all about the person wanting to have more money and power like this guy does, and it can't be done on his own merits. It has to be done by tearing somebody else down. So if he wants to have a podcast like this one or a sports show, which I'm sure he has of his own, and say this guy sucks and everything, that's more applicable in sports because it is entirely a spectator sport in terms of either you're in the sport or you're commenting on it. There's no in between. But if he's going to jump into the realm of politics and say Vivek sucks, I would imagine if he went on a sports show and he said, LeBron James sucks, and not just because of his politics, but because of his rebounds per game or his turnovers or anything. You're going to have to do that in politics too. You're going to have to say Vivek's rebounds per games aren't high enough for him to be president. You see what I'm saying? Whereas you just come in here and you're just like, I'm an empty vessel for you, MSNBC. I will just say guy bad. In this case, it's brown guy bad instead of orange man bad. And I don't have to give any reason at all. It's just that he's mean. Isn't it that this just another form of he's mean? I don't like him and he's a nerd, basically. Even though that's supposed to be the thing that they are against. They're supposed to be against bullying. They're supposed to be against picking on people. They're supposed to be pro-Indian men in academics and in sciences. And then what do they find? They find a different POC, even though I hate the term, to come in and tear this other guy down based on nothing.
Well, they're not even saying he's being mean. He's literally just pulling out random character traits from 20 years ago. It's all completely insane. And what's super dark about this is that, yes, this guy, I mean, I'm not a fan of him. I never like watched his show or listened to his podcast, but I do remember him being on, I believe it was Around the Horn. We can Google search that. It was sports. So what happened? What happened between, his height of fame on Around the Horn in 2014 or whatever it might be till now, to where he gets the call from MSNBC to say, "Hey," I mean, how did that happen? Like, did he message somebody and say, but did he say, "Hey, I went to school with Vivek"? Like, how did that conversation even start? Like, "Hey, we need somebody to tear this guy down. We maybe don't want it to be this white woman because, maybe that's a bridge too far even for us to have a white person tearing down a brown person that we're supposed to love, even though it's painfully obvious that it's no longer about race, right?" So how did that even start? And then when you ask the people in the like, it's obviously two things are happening. You could go to the hood in Flatbush, Brooklyn. You can go to the hood in San Francisco or even Oakland, California, and 8 out of 10 people, maybe even 9 out of 10 people, just regular Americans, Black Americans for the most part, will be like, "Yeah, this isn't really adding up." But somehow, some way, it's the Tory types, it's the MSNBC types, it's the I mean, to state the obvious, it's the white liberals who are continuing to push their narrative, pretending that black people are on board with transgender stuff for the most part, pretending that black people love Joe Biden. None of that is true. And this is what makes it painfully obvious when you just ask the commenters to ask the commenters to explain why I should get on board with this, and they can't do it.
Character assassination has been the name of the game for the left wing for I'm guessing since the beginning of time. And they can't explain away anything else, so they go for character assassination. Trump, Kavanaugh, Clarence Thomas, Ron DeSantis,
Oh, the
Carrie
list goes
Lake,
on.
anybody who it is. But if that was to happen the other way, they would just say sexist, racist, homophobe, anything they can. So the bullying is only allowed to work one way. If I go on a channel on Fox or something and say, Joe Biden was friends with people in the Ku Klux Klan. He was friends with segregationists. He's lied about marching and being part of civil rights movements. He's lied about this, that, and the other. They would say, oh, this guy is just, on right-wing crazy news network lying about the president, blah, blah, blah. Even though everything I just said was true, the bullying against them is bullying and an ist or an obic. But the other way, it's just
Yes.
it's just the truth. It's allowed.
Yeah.
It's what they
So let
deserve.
me ask you this: is it better or worse? And look, we have a small sample size. I can't remotely pretend to have talked to thousands of people, millions of people, nothing like that. But in a small sample size, I've come across people, even in the state of California, that are hip to what's happening, and they see the political shenanigans, and they see the corruption, and they see all that. Is it good that people are waking up to that, or is it bad because people are waking up to that and the establishment is not going to go away? They're not going to, again, for the 100th time, the people who are in quote unquote in control right now are not going to say, we've been outvoted this time. That's not going to happen. They're not going to say, hey, you know what? We gave it a good try, but people didn't like our policies. We're going to go back to the drawing board and come up with some ideas that people like. That's not going to happen. So is it good that people are getting hip to it, or is it even darker that people are getting hip to it and nothing is still going to change?
I think it's both. I think people have to be hip to it, if you will, but they also have to stand up and say something. The fear, and I was talking about this with someone the other day, the fear of looking bad. And I saw a clip of Vince McMahon saying the problem with millennials in just wrestling is that they have a fear of failure and that they'll be exposed. This is some sort of weird mentality that women have in our generation and the entirety of Gen Z has, where the internet lives forever, yes, but do people actually care about you? And the answer is no. I don't see, Eric, why the average person, let's say you're a 35-year-old middle American who works at a grocery store, whatever job you want it to be, why you need to have an online personality, why you need to have a presence, why you need to have a persona. It's this weird feeling that everybody is, I'm just one step away from fame and fortune. This next post goes viral, I'm going to be a billionaire. You know what I mean? I'm going to be asked to be on all these shows. This is this weird mentality people have where they don't want to stand up. What was going to happen to restaurants who are going to be forcibly closed if they said, we're staying open? What was going to happen? Your options were stay closed, have no business, go bankrupt. Option 2, stay open, fight for it. You lose, you go bankrupt anyways. The difference between those two is you're not stepping out from the crowd.
Well,
And
it's
that's some.
also funny that the henchmen, the authorities will show up and shut down a business, but they won't show up when you call the cops after your car gets broken into or after you get robbed. They'll write you a parking ticket if you park illegally for 10 minutes, but if somebody strong arms you out of your iPhone, which they won't even be able to use, the cops aren't coming, right? So it's very clear who the cops work for, and you can talk about your back to blue or whatever. And I actually talked to police officers here in the last couple of days in California, and they're just regular people. They're normal people, but they're not. They have no. They don't care. They're like, it's just a job to them. They don't. I feel like back in the day when we were young, like kids wanted to be cops, and You know,
Mhm.
the cops, even like if you watch old episodes of Cops, that you would see guys like driving the car like, you know, I grew up here and I just want to help the neighborhood. It's not like that anymore. This is just like a job. They're glorified security guards. They're not going to do anything. They're not going to stand up to anybody. If the mayor of San Francisco says shut down that business, they will go shut down that business. But if a man calls and say, my car, I just got carjacked, they'll be like, ah.
Well, this makes me think of this clip of this Jasmine Crockett girl, and they're gonna she. It's just sad to watch. So this girl comes up. She's a what they call a freshman congresswoman. She's 2 years in, or has 2 years left. However, this is the first time. She's from Texas, Democrat in Texas. So obviously she probably had to fight to get that position because they really want Texas to turn purple and then blue, right? So you can watch this girl's clip here, and it's so obvious how she's trying to get a clip, and not just in any, not in the sense where maybe Nancy Pelosi would get a clip, or Jim Jordan would get a clip, or Ted Cruz would get a clip, where maybe they have some information to back it up. I'm saying, and I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt of Nancy Pelosi, if she's not drunk here, that she's been in there long enough, she knows what to say. But this is just a woman who says a whole bunch of crap. She goes through a list of Trump indictments, of course, no details, and it shows the very reason why they have these Trump indictments. The very reason why they have these Trump indictments is so that a girl like this, in a position of political power, can say, look how many indictments he has, therefore he must be evil. And then she goes on to say about how great Joe Biden is. So just looking for a clip, and this is the product of what is coming out of a generation of people who say, they basically do PR training as their life. Their life is, how can I be most vastly appealing and get the most views? So this girl's going to say, I've got the Trump indictments handy. I'm going to list those. Then I'm going to do the talking point of Joe Biden's a loving father. And then I'm going to say no evidence. The only thing of those nothing requires further explanation. It's just all surface level arguments. So let's watch a little bit of this and we'll get your take on it.
President of the United States has committed. But when we start talking about things that look like evidence, they want to act like they blind. They don't know what this is. These are our national secrets. Looks like in the shitter to me. This looks like more evidence of our national secrets, say on a stage at Mar-a-Lago. When we're talking about somebody that's committed high crimes, it's at least indictments. Let's say 32 counts related to unauthorized retention of national security secrets, 7 counts related to obstructing the investigation, 3 false statements, 1 count of conspiracy to defraud the United States, falsifying business records, conspiracy to defraud the United States, 2 counts related to efforts to obstruct the vote certification proceedings, 1 count of conspiracy to...
This is...
If you were to stop this woman and be like, okay, great, Trump's got a bunch of indictments. Can you tell me about one of them in detail, Congresswoman? What do you think she's going to say, Eric?
No, obviously she's going to basically say some form of, you're not allowed to question us. So she's flailing around. She's taking her tips from AOC and even Nancy Pelosi when she ripped up the State of the Union speech. She's obviously being very dramatic. She's clearly wearing this wig weave thing. She's got a Louis Vuitton pin on. She's wearing her corruption on the outside, right? Like, this is $1,000 hairpiece, $1,000 crystal encrusted Louis Vuitton pin, screaming about indictments, basically saying, look at all the things we've tried to get Trump on. It's like, dude, you're trying to pretend like it's a third, and even if there was a third party, be it the DOJ or the FBI, they're all in bed together. Quite obviously, it's not rocket science. But you can't just sit there, and this is what they do: is look at all the things that I don't like about Donald Trump, and we will state those as fact, even though you're just continuing to. You're saying the quiet part out loud. It's like you're throwing the kitchen sink at him. You've been throwing the kitchen sink at him since he came down the escalators all the way back in 2015, and you guys are you're fueling your your audience, your base or whatever, who continue to chase this dragon. Like, I mean, there are people out there who still think like, oh, we're gonna get him this time. You guys, you shut down his business. You give his supporters years in jail. It's all painfully obvious, And to your point, no, there's absolutely no substance. She's not gonna, and this trickles down through everybody, right? Again, nobody is going to back up any of these policy points. Nobody is going to back up any of these agendas, any of these talking points. They're only going to say obey. They're not going to explain to you why you should. They're not going to explain why they're good. They're not going to explain why it makes sense, why it's going to help people. You might have a couple of weirdo Krasenstein types who are going to jump through flaming rings and do all these mental gymnastics and twist themselves into a pretzel to try to convince you that it makes sense, but it obviously doesn't. And their whole thing is just obey. Put your mask back on. That is obviously a tale for how much control they have, right? Like, we're gonna, oh, mask, 2 masks, no mask, 3 masks, whatever. That's letting them know how much control they still have. And they they're gonna mask it with everything. We're gonna mask it with race. We're gonna mask it with gender, but it all just means obey. And to bring it full circle, we know this by now. The foundation of that is the transformer agenda, right? Because as soon as you get them to believe that, everything else will be blindly obeyed. Do you think for 1 second they're gonna say, "Okay, yeah, man can be a woman," and then they're gonna question somebody doing blow at the White House? No, that's easy. It's all easy after that. So this woman, she's gonna scream her little eyes out, and she's gonna go viral for a couple of weeks. Here we are talking about it. So she wins this round, but it's all complete surface level nonsense at its very best. At its worst, it's completely manipulative evil.
Well, I don't think she wins if we're calling her stupid, which I will go ahead and say I am, because it reveals the exact nature which the indictment. She gets to mention them, and then you still got me. I'm getting an interruption thing here.
You were frozen for a little bit, but you're back now.
It shows the exact reason why they do the indictments. She can mention all of them, and then on the other side, they say nothing about Joe Biden is real. Believe everything about Trump, even though there's no charges. We have the power to bring the charges, but nothing that Joe Biden does is wrong. He's nice.
Yes.
Violate civil rights. 23
Now,
counts related to forgery or false.
We got to
chill. We need to
It's just
hear
her
her
voice is-
talk about Joe Biden, though.
Statements, 8 counts related to soliciting, and I could go on because he's got 91 counts pending right now. But I will tell you what the president has been guilty of. He has unfortunately been guilty of loving his child unconditionally, and that is the only evidence that they have brought forward. And honestly, I hope and pray that my parents love me half as much as he loves his child. Until they find some evidence, we need to get back to the people's work, which means keeping this government open.
So tell you how bad Trump is. Go ahead.
First of all, she wants to talk about unconditional love, which we know is a facade, because as soon as they get the opportunity, they're going to tell you that maybe you should bin the kid, right? You should get rid of that baby. I mean, if you're up in Canada, they're going to just tell you to kill yourself, right? Got a headache? You ever thought about suicide? You know, that meme. And then lastly here, because this is absolutely triggering, watching this woman, parade around, neck roll and stuff, like doing all of the stereotypes, clearly pandering, trying to go viral to get her claws into the Cardi B crowd, right? Like, that's all this is to get somebody to say, yes, queen, and these people are for us, which they're slowly losing that market as well, right? Like, they're losing everybody, so they're trying to get a hold of the last little bit of people that they had control of. They're trying to maintain that goal, maintain that hold that they have on that crowd of people, by doing all of this weirdo stereotypical stuff. But then you rewind back to Cardi B complaining about voting for or supporting Bernie Sanders and taxes and all this stuff. None of it makes any sense. But they want even such a small population, right? Like, if we talk about percentages, the 13% crowd, half of which are women, those are the people that this woman is targeting. Which, no matter how you slice it, is still not enough to maintain control, unless, of course, you cheat.
Here's the list that I came up with after watching this clip for the first time, because, oh my God, 91 Trump indictments. There's 0 things about Joe Biden and Hunter Biden that have been brought to light. He just loves him. So they have the phone calls where he says, My father's in the car right now with me right now. Are you sure that's what you mean? They had secret dinners with people from Kazakhstan, from Ukraine, from all these countries. Ukraine specifically, people from Burisma, okay, the company in which Hunter Biden was employed. The prosecutor they fired for investigating Hunter. The classified documents that they found in Chinatown, in the library at the university, in his garage with the car. Let's not forget the laptop and everything on there, which includes emails from Air Force Two, which he was inexplicably on trips with his father on Air Force Two, going out the back entrance, not being seen until he was in the uh, presidential limousine, going to other countries while he's with them. The wire transfer. Hunter Biden gets a $130,000 wire transfer to spend on a car the very next day. The IRS whistleblowers who say that his file is treated differently because he's the president's son. The recorded calls with a Chinese businessman. The shell companies, which of course is all lies and conjecture. I can't prove anything, Your Honor, in a court of law. But when somebody comes on the air, Eric, and says XYZ about Trump, but Hunter, like, how more telling can it be? And you only have to hope that people who watch this who might not like Trump say, oh, well, is that true? Is Trump guilty of all these things, but Hunter and Joe Biden have done zero things? There are people who believe this. They're called crazy people.
Yeah, but that's why it all revolves around brainwashing. That's why cuz look, you can't argue logic in an illogical argument, right? So that's why it just has to be tribal brainwashing. Like, just know that if you question any of this, you're going to be shunned. And look, again, on the plus side, I don't think I can't stress enough. I wish I could talk to everybody in the country, obviously, but in the middle, in most of Texas, I mean, South Dakota, Alabama, Louisiana, like California, okay, is the most populous state in the country, I believe, right? I believe California is the most populous state. So there's a lot riding on it. And that's why it all hinges on brainwashing. And that's why even the local news, I can't state enough how triggering it is to hear what we are supposed to call news in the San Francisco Bay Area literally just be so, I mean, they talk about it as though there is just no other option. There's never a conversation about like this side, that side. It's literally just climate change is affecting and they just say it as a state effect. So that's what it is. It's decades of brainwashing. Um and some people snap out of it. Some people get their heels dug in too deep. And I do think that a lot of people, older people specifically, know the truth, but it's a pride factor. They're like, I would be so embarrassed to admit wrongdoing now because I've gone so deep over the last 20 years that I can't just back out now. It's just like, you got to keep going because it's too embarrassing.
Patreon.com is where we pay our bills, Eric. Patreon.com/UOPod is where you get the bonus podcast if you want to get some sponsorship reads going for us after this. Help us become Joe Rogan. Help us become the Raptors superfan who we can't explain how he's afforded front row seats to the Toronto Raptors for the past 30 years. Or you can be an unauthorized person. These are Canadian prices, so you're going to log in to Patreon, you're going to sign up, and you're going to be like, wow, my American dollar gets me so much further because of crappy Canadian dollars. So that's like $6 or $7 US. You get a bonus podcast every single week. Look how happy Eric looks on that because he's not censored by YouTube, where we have to, wait until we can talk with the Transformers later in the show. And also, you don't have to wait on Getter's crappy streaming service that is not working today because they have got 3 different streaming services on their platform and no one knows what to use. Eric. So patreon.com/UOPod is where you'll get the bonus podcast. I've also posted previous stuff there more than a week ahead of when it gets released publicly with extra bonus footage. This video right here where I went to Oshawa, Ontario, Canada, saw piles of poop, got yelled at by a guy at the beach, and so forth and so on. Eric, we got a message from a new sponsor?
Yeah, so we're thankful for Dubby Energy www.dubby.gg.com. You can use my code. Oh, look, looks like the camera's doing a little something weird on that. You can use my code EricB, and you will get 10% off. We're working with them. We're thankful, and you're going to hear more from them later. Obviously, yep, there you go. Nice. Go ahead, check it out. Jitterless energy drink. Replace your coffee, replace your Monster, replace your Prime, replace all that with this mix at home energy drink. And of course, bring it back
To you?
to
Yep.
me. Yep, New York City 2020. I think as time goes on, I need to promote this a little bit more, because the further away we get from this monumental year, the crazier it looks. So go ahead and buy that. It's on deep discounts on Amazon right now. I have no control over the price, but you can get it for only a couple bucks and have a conversation piece at your coffee table.
If you guys aren't familiar with the human rights campaign, it is a lie of a thing. It's one of those classic things where they say they're about something. So how can you be wrong? How can you dislike human rights? What it actually is transing your kids. We're going to see the very creepy
Before we get into
campaign
this,
ad. Yeah.
the Human Rights Campaign, the American Civil Liberties Union, the Council on Foreign Affairs, these are all machine. I mean, these are the pistons, right? These are the people that are I believe to be behind a lot of the policy, like I don't know, you can call it lobbying, you can call it whatever you want, but these are the people that are behind some of the most sinister agenda pushes in the world.
Well, what I want people to think about is, if this person started to try to sell you something, would you believe them? Would you think that they're a reasonable person if this person came up to you in the street?
To set the record straight on what gender affirming care is and what gender affirming care is not.
Gender affirming care is age appropriate care that is medically necessary for the
Pause it.
well-being of many
Medically necessary?
Yeah, medically necessary and age appropriate. So these are things that you have to say, right? Like,
But
if
what does
if
it
somebody
mean?
has, but if you have to tell somebody this is age appropriate and it is medically necessary, is it though? Right? Like, is it?
Well,
Or are
it's
you
the
just
life and death thing, Eric. What is necessary about, and Joe Rogan made this point recently, what is necessary about pumping them full of hormones and doing surgeries on them? Why can't you just let them, if you're saying that who they are on the inside is most important, then why can't you just let them be that? You have
Exactly.
to then destroy their body to match the fantasy in your head.
Yes,
Can you
and
do
turn
that
them.
about anything else? Can I be, South Park did this, the dolphin episode where Stan's dad turns into a dolphin. If I believe I'm a professional wrestler, should I get those synthol shots in my bicep, Eric, and get ab implants like hot actor Elliot Page? And
Yeah,
if I don't get those and I don't get those paid for me, are you now guilty of making me commit suicide or damaging my mental health?
yeah. I mean, it gets darker.
transgender and non-binary people who experience symptoms of gender dysphoria.
Gender dysphoria is distress that results from having one's gender identity not match one's sex assigned at birth.
Every major medical and mental health organization says that it is medically necessary to support people in affirming their gender identity.
It's medically necessary to give people emotional support and agree with what they do. Think about that statement.
What this person just says, we have hijacked every major medical institution. That's what this person is saying. We have hijacked them and put the squeeze to them. We've put the screws to them enough to where they now agree that it makes sense to mutilate your body and eat a bunch of drugs for the rest of your life.
This woman was taken off the set of a 90s sitcom playing the geeky neighbor to come and tell you how smart she is and how you need to perform surgeries on your child. Move over, Kimmy Gibbler from Full House.
It's age appropriate, as they say.
That's more than 1.3 million doctors in the United States, including the American Medical Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics.
You should know that transition-related or gender-affirming care looks different for every transgender and non-binary person.
Gender transition is a personal process
that can include changing clothes, names, and pronouns to fit a person's gender identity.
Some people take medication and some
Is
do
that
not.
Depot?
Dude, this is R.I.P. Debo, bro.
He's coming to take your bike if you don't trans your kid.
Wait, they're gonna get to
Some
it. They're gonna
They're
get
gonna
to. They're gonna get to the best part. Keep going.
adults have surgeries and others do not.
Oh.
How someone transitions is entirely their choice to be made with their family and their doctor.
All gender affirming care is age appropriate, medically necessary, supported by all major medical associations, and in many cases, life-saving.
There it is.
I would not be a trans adult if I didn't have the support as a trans kid.
Eric, in what other world would you be able to get away with saying, you have to do it, it's the best thing to do, and everybody agrees that you're supposed to do it? Imagine doing that. Imagine we're talking about steroids, which in many cases this is. We're talking about hormones. Imagine you were a guy. Do you remember those trials or the congressional hearings with Mark McGuire and Barry Bonds and Rafael Palmeiro for the baseball
Vaguely.
players on steroids? Well, they brought them out to ask them about steroids. Imagine a guy came out there, a person who's done it, which obviously these people have hormonified themselves. Imagine Mark McGuire came out there and was like, steroids are good for you. Every doctor says you should do it, and everybody needs to do it.
And
if
you're
you
gonna die
don't-
if you don't.
Exactly. And if you don't, every baseball player is going to kill themselves. Well, you would say, well, that sounds insane, Mark McGuire. You're just talking about hitting home runs. And that sounds insane for baseball. But we're talking about people's children here.
This is
My
what
God.
they do. This is what they do. So as soon as you question any of their agendas or narratives, it's just they slowly, obey, or I'm gonna do it. I'm
Yeah.
gonna do it.
But also guns
I'm
are
gonna
bad.
do it if you.
This really contradicts the other statements of it's never happening to kids. This stuff is never being done with kids. The process is so long that that's the slippery slope. Up here is that it's never been done to kids. Down here is the process is so long you can't just walk in and get it. Then it's kids are getting it. But you need to talk to your doctor. They do puberty blockers, which are reversals, and then we're all the way down to now kids are getting it, and if you don't, they're going to kill themselves. All the way up from denial to accept it or die. It's like a P. Diddy campaign. Trans or die.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. These are the people, right? So this is for lack of a better term, the grooming into just believe what we say. We're gonna just keep. I mean, they're just blatantly lying to you. Oh, every medical. I mean, all the things you just said. Those are all just blatant lies. They are in a very, very, very slim minority. Anybody with an IQ higher than their shoe size will be able to tell you that this doesn't make sense. It is only people who have been completely controlled. Nope. Think about a normal kid. Do you remember that video went viral a couple of weeks ago of the kid, the little boy who his dad says, "Here's $10,000 or here's an Oreo," and he takes the Oreo? It's like anybody. So that's okay. We can nod to the father who's properly provided for his kid and kept adult things out of his way. Do you think that little boy? I mean, it takes a certain amount of outside influence. That little boy is not going to, the same kid who picks an Oreo over $10,000 is not going to just on his own think that he's a little girl. That has to happen from the outside. And this is what they're doing. And hopefully, if they have their way, they will beat you into submission, sometimes literally. And I want to bring this to tie this full circle to the beginning of the show. This is what they're doing when you go to San Francisco and you see I'm working on, I might have some videos from San Francisco. It's very difficult to talk to people because they short circuit.
They're on the heroin hunch.
Well, yeah. So there are, I mean, I have an idea if I was just going to go around with a box of cigarettes and see who would talk for a cigarette or two. But anyways,
Andy Mullen theory.
Is that what he does?
Well, he does it with beer and the homeless.
Okay, yeah. That's so. But there's that, and then there's also quote unquote normal people, but they know it. They're so embarrassed. They know deep down inside that they can't even fielding one question will make them look like a evil right winger. Just talking about one simple subject, and it doesn't even have to be as deep as, transing the kids, or are you going to vote for a Republican mayor? It doesn't even have to be that deep. It could literally be something as simple as like, um how do you think we could fix all the car break-ins? And then, like, we had that issue on one of our posts where the guy's like, "Oh, just don't leave your backpack.
How
Don't leave
dare
your
you have
back."
a problem with
Yeah,
crime?
how dare you have a problem with this? And I'll again, maybe I'm rolling too many things together, but when I first got back to California, and I was hanging out with some old friends of mine, and I truly was like, yo, I'm trying to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. I'm
Mhm.
eyeball deep in news. I know the news is fake, so maybe it's hyperbolic. Maybe it's not as bad as the news is making it seem. And they looked at me, and these are default libtards. These are kind of, they're not retarded, but they're not like, they're not short circuiting. They're not like, oh, you're an evil person, but they're like, they don't see it. They can't connect the dots. Anyways, they're like, I'm like, I hope it's not as bad as the news is making it seem. And they look at each other and they look at me and they're like, no, it's pretty bad. Like and then they rattle off stories of their friends who have had their cars broken into in the past 2 weeks.
Eric, why don't they move?
Because they're mildly retarded, I think. Yeah. I don't know. It's a good question.
If I was in America and could choose anywhere to live, you know what I'm saying? You do this, you've done this all the time, where you've just picked up and left. Nobody knows how you do it. But even just move to a less insane Californian city?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I complain housing prices, cost of living, everything. I don't have to deal with people breaking into my car here. Like, I don't have to deal with, you know, blue-haired people yelling at me in the streets. There are problems here. If I couldn't park somewhere without fear of and 50% chance of my car breaking into, I would just get up and leave to a different area in my province.
And think about
But
the victim blaming, though. Think about, there's certain situations where you are supposed to blindly believe somebody, and if
Mhm.
you don't, you would be called victim blaming or victim shaming. And when we do that in this situation, it's fine. Oh no, you left a penny in the cup holder. You left your iPhone charger in the car. That's your fault. It's all absolutely ridiculous, and it's incredibly malicious. Like there's no look. We used to be the problem. I think traditionally, if we were lucky, would be insider trading, skimming, embezzling taxes, spending taxpayer funds on fancy dinners. That would
Real
be
American stuff,
real American stuff. This is malicious destruction. They're flooding the streets with dope, Narcan, illegals, destroying entire cities, thousands of people at a time for their own benefit, and there is no coming back. All we can do right now is hope, knock on wood, to keep this cancer from spreading, because it's not, you don't put toothpaste back in the tube. It's over.
Thoughts and prayers. Let's leave on the fat activist du jour, because this is insane and ridiculous. If you guys recall, there's the Dove partner, who for some reason Dove hired a woman who can't even reach the parts of her body that you would use soap on. And there's a big backlash about this because she's morbidly obese. You guys want to see a hot pic of her? Here it is, trying out for 600-pound life. Yes, I mean, yes, it's disgusting. Take whatever side you will on that. But it wasn't enough. You got this ad campaign for doing absolutely nothing from Dove. You're the size of a whale here in the orca tank at SeaWorld, and you get
And
rewarded for that.
she does look like the poop emoji, even more so than Lizzo.
So you've gotten all that, but people were mean to you on the internet, which was predictable, which is part of the plan, because the people who are doing this, in my theory, hate this woman, and they actually want to eliminate her from society. So they expose her to massive, massive global scale ridicule in hopes that these people will no longer show themselves in society. That's a working theory of mine. So it's not enough that she got paid for this campaign. She now needs money because she's in trouble, because it's life or death, Eric, because everything else. And look at the title here on GoFundMe, which has raised $11,000. help keep young Charlottesville activists safe. So what you'll see is they've thrown everything at the wall. And, I think it's a good sign that this person's only gotten $11,000, because I think in 2018, you'd have had obese black activists in Charlottesville all in the same sentence. You're getting 200 grand minimum. My name is Eric, and I'm fundraising to support my cousin, Ziona Bryant, who's a Gen Z activist and advocate from Charlottesville, which is when 2017 she showed up at 12 years old. Somebody allowed their 12-year-old to show up at a communist v neo-Nazi protest where somebody died, even though it wasn't as big of a deal as everybody says. Communist v protest, nobody likes either side, and you let your 12-year-old go to that. And, she probably was there staring, being like, what is going on? And somebody brought her there to teach her how to be an activist. Taking credit for Robert E. Lee statue taken down. And they say, sadly, in today's national climate, with so many angry, violent, and unpredictable people, being a visible, outspoken advocate and activist comes with significant risks. This is not the reason why they don't like it, Eric. They don't like it because a gigantic corporation called Dove is telling you that it's healthy and cool to be 600-pound life, 90-day fiance, married at first sight lady on TLC, essentially. They're saying this is the greatest thing in the world. Ziona has been receiving hate mail and threats for years. Doubt it. And recently they have become worse. Ziona is currently a graduate student. We want to
hate mail
ensure
for
that she's
her,
able...
that would be a mean comment. Like if you were to comment, if you were to comment 3 poop emojis on one of her Instagram posts, that would constitute hate mail for these people. And this is what they're doing, though, right? Like, just really quickly, they want you to believe that this is beautiful. And look, there's a market for everything. Some people probably absolutely love this. I don't, and you're trying to force it on me, just like they want to force you to well, if you don't date a trans woman, then you know what, you get it. They're pulling reality, they're rug pulling reality at every possible turn. And some people long to go back to the days of a hot, brunette shampooing, or I guess this is soap, but where
it could be an old person, it could be a young person, it could just be anyone who's not trying to shove a message down your throat.
No, I did go back, put smoking hot women in ads. Let's just do that. You can make them black, you can make them white, you can make them Latino, you can make them Asian, there are beautiful women of all races. I'm not here to claim anyone is better than the other, but you could find somebody quite obviously hotter than this woman who obviously looks like the poop emoji. I mean, you're going out of your way to pretend. You're going out of your way to
exactly
manipulate reality when you could just there's a lot of people that you could put in before this woman who is obviously unhealthy, bro. I mean,
well,
come on.
you know how when people say that they're willing to give up like their data because on Amazon or wherever it might be, because they like the fact that things are marketed towards what they actually want, as opposed to getting, a Pampers ad on TBS, you're going to get, what is Andrew like? Video games and pit vipers put towards me because that's what I like. When people say that, it kind of rings in conjunction with this, where it's just like, just try to sell me your product, bro. Why does a soap company need to have a message other than it gets you clean? Why does Taco Bell need to have lesbians doing a seance instead of just saying and convincing me that I won't get diarrhea? Why won't all these companies, why doesn't Ford just sell me a truck that goes far instead of being like, let's force this electric vehicle down your throat that the CEO of the company won't even drive? Who are these people in these companies, these Bud Lights and everything? They're just saying, to hell with, and you see it on Shark Tank, to hell with selling me my product. Millennials need to be sold a story. And I don't think that's ever been true. I think that's what they convinced themselves was true so that they could have an excuse to push what they want. The girl who works at Dove, and it was a woman who came up with this, I guarantee you, who said, how do we sell this Dove to people? Well, they said, well, you know what's really in right now? Body positivity and black activism.
No, I doubt it. They just don't. The money is not the bottom line anymore. They have
That's
enough
what
money.
I'm saying is this is an excuse to push her thing.
Yeah. So they answer to a different. They don't answer to the shareholders. They don't answer to the bottom line. They have plenty of money. So now they're trying to appease somebody else. and I don't know who it is.
Well, who's Dove? Procter and Gamble, I'm guessing, or something
Yeah,
like
I think
that.
so. Yeah, sounds about right.
Wow. Milton Bradley. Milton Bradley's behind everything.
Disney,
Board
I
game
don't know.
company. UOPod.com will take you to subscribe to us on all platforms. Twitter. I think we might be done with Getter, Eric. It's so complicated. You can't even upload the data for the
What about
podcast before it's
Twitch?
live. Twitch, we still love. Twitter, X going to give it to you. YouTube, and of course, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. We still love you all there. Patreon.com/UOPod. Get it while it's hot. I'm blind. I've just been seeing blue light all day. Eric, final thoughts?
Buy my book, New York City 2020. And I think real last thought here. Unfortunately, we're gonna be getting a little bit more California content before I figure out where I'm going to escape to. But right now, it needs to be known that this is actually worse than most people think.
This is me ETing you to phone home to California. Eric, phone home. Watched a good movie last night. It was Willem Dafoe trapped inside of an apartment. He's insane. Go ahead and watch it. It's on Amazon Prime. After you listen to this on Amazon Podcasts.
Turn it up, Jordan.